On the edge of midnight, thunder whispered above the ancient kingdom. Princess Lian, 16, stood on the palace's marble balcony, robe of midnight blue wrapped around her slender frame, long black hair tangled by the humid wind. In her shaking hands was her mother's last letter, worn, creased, fragile as hope. Grief pressed against her ribs, sharp as the distant bell that echoed across the river below. The starry river glimmered, reflecting thousands of stars in trembling ripples, while a crescent moon, thin as longing, hovered in a storm-streaked sky. Distant servants, lanterns low, retreated into the shadows, leaving Lian alone beneath the silent gaze of the night. "If you can hear me, guide me tonight," Princess Lian whispered, her voice swallowed by wind and rain. Tears threatened, but resolve grew in their place. This night, the queen's final wish, seek the truth beneath the river's light, became Lian's only purpose. In that lonely storm-lit moment, the journey began. Inside the palace, silence pressed in thick and heavy as velvet drapes. Princess Lian's footsteps echoed through the grand candlelit corridors, every step drawing the chill of absence deeper into her bones. Ancient tapestries lined the walls, their colors faded with age, but still telling stories of the river's blessings. The queen's chambers loomed ahead, sealed with bands of black silk and guarded by the sweet, somber fragrance of incense. Lian paused, one hand resting on the carved wooden door, fingers tracing its swirling patterns as memories flooded back, her mother's laughter, the soft warmth of her embrace. Princess Lian whispered, "Mother, I am lost." Grief and longing mixed in her chest as she turned away from the door, a single tear rolling down her cheek. She caught her breath, straightened her back, and let the candlelight guide her back down the hall, a resolve beginning to burn through her sorrow. The starry river shimmered through a distant window, promising answers somewhere beyond the night. Dawn's first hint crept through the royal gardens as Princess Lian wandered between ancient willow trees, dew-soaked grass soft underfoot. The world was veiled in silver mist, birds stirring in the branches above, their songs barely rising above the hush. She paused at the reflecting pool, kneeling on mossy stone, and gazed into the still water. The surface mirrored the pale blue of her robe, her dark hair, and the faint worried lines etched on her young face. "You always found answers in silence, Mother," Princess Lian murmured, tracing ripples with a fingertip. Petals fell from overhead, drifting onto the pool, sending tiny constellations dancing across the mirrored sky. Pain and hope tangled within her as memories of childhood laughter and lessons beneath these trees stirred in her mind. She closed her eyes, letting the peace of the moment seep into her, drawing courage from the ancient, watching garden. Beyond, the starry river's flow beckoned, a silent promise just beyond the garden walls. As the sun climbed higher, Princess Lian entered the grand library, its vaulted ceiling arching like a cathedral, above rows upon rows of scrolls and tomes. Shafts of morning light pierced the dust-laden air, illuminating words of long-dead sages, and the river's winding legend painted across old maps. Lian's fingers trailed over spines, seeking comfort and wisdom. She paused at a heavy wooden table, spreading an ancient map of the starry river before her, and opening a manuscript illuminated with delicate ink drawings. "If there is truth, I will find it here," Princess Lian said, voice steadier. Determination kindled within as she traced the painted river with one finger, feeling its call pull her from the shadows of grief. She gathered the map and book in her arms, her resolve echoing in the vast, silent room. A new beginning glimmered amid the golden light and swirling dust. Night fell once more, painting the palace in deep indigo and violet. On the now empty balcony, Princess Lian stood alone, heart pounding as she watched hundreds of lanterns rise from the riverbank below, each flame a prayer from her people for guidance and peace. The starry river's waters gleamed, alive with shimmering colors and hope, as the sky exploded in starlight. Clutching her mother's letter to her chest, Princess Lian breathed in the crisp air, her resolve now fierce and bright. "Mother, I will follow the river," she vowed. "Whatever its truth, I will find it for you." As the first lanterns floated past, she bowed her head, the light reflecting in her eyes and setting her determination ablaze. The world had changed forever. Her journey, born of sorrow and hope, had begun beneath a sky filled with wishes. The day after the lanterns drifted down the Starry River, Princess Lian rose with a hollow ache, her heart heavy beneath the weight of her longing. Servants prepared her for the morning audience, but every brushstroke through her hair and every fastening of her robe felt distant, like ritual without meaning. As she stood before the great mirror, her reflection seemed a stranger, eyes shadowed with sleepless grief, mouth set in a line of silent yearning. Memories of her mother's soft hands haunted her as she whispered, "How do I live with a wish unfulfilled?" From the window, she watched the river, swollen from last night's storm, churning with secrets and sorrow. The world inside the palace was routine and decorum. Outside, the water called her name. Princess Lian pressed a trembling hand to the glass, longing for answers, her spirit hovering between hope and despair. In the great hall, Princess Lian moved through the daily rites, surrounded by courtiers, whose words and laughter felt distant, muffled by the river's unseen current. Ministers delivered reports, and the royal council debated matters of state, but Lian's thoughts drifted. She noticed every strained smile and sidelong glance, aware of the unspoken anxiety that her grief brought to the court. "Duty is not feeling," one advisor said, trying to draw her back. Lian nodded, but her mind replayed the queen's dying words, their meaning a riddle that tightened around her heart. Through a window high above, sunlight flickered on the water, and for a moment she imagined her mother's spirit riding the wind. Princess Lian said, "Even in duty, there is longing." She sat straighter, but the ache of emptiness remained, her wish for meaning more urgent than ever. After the council dispersed, Lian retreated to the palace gardens, drawn to the sound of water and the scent of blooming magnolia. She found herself standing at the garden's stone bridge, watching the river surge and swirl beneath. The current seemed wild, restless, mirroring her own turbulent heart. A child's laughter rang out nearby, and Lian turned to see two young girls playing with paper boats at the water's edge. Their joy was pure and uncomplicated, untouched by sorrow. Lian smiled despite herself, feeling a memory surface, her mother folding tiny boats for her and sending them downstream with wishes whispered on the wind. Princess Lian said, "Once, happiness was simple." She knelt by the girls, helping them set another boat afloat, her hands steadying theirs. In their laughter she felt the ache of loss and a flicker of hope that she might one day find peace. The garden faded into dusk as Princess Lian walked along the river's edge, the world hushed except for the whisper of water and the wind in the reeds. Lanterns glowed on distant boats, their lights reflected in the swirling current. She paused beneath a willow tree, heart aching with questions she could not voice. Shadows gathered around her as she thought of her mother's wish, the burden of longing pulling at her soul. Princess Lian whispered, "What am I seeking? And who will I be when I find it?" A heron lifted from the reeds, wings bright in the dusk. Lian watched its flight, her heart catching at the image of something free, unburdened. She pressed her palm to the earth, grounding herself, feeling both the ache of loss and a new, growing courage, as night descended on the river. Night deepened, and the palace was quiet but for the sound of rain against carved stone. Alone in her chamber, Princess Lian sat by her writing desk, the faded letter beside her, ink and brush ready. By candlelight she began to write, not to a courtier or advisor, but to her mother, her words both a confession and a promise. "You asked me to seek the truth," she wrote. "Tonight I begin by seeking myself." The ink shimmered on the page, each stroke steadying her breath. Through the open window, the river's song was soft, urging her onward. As Lian sealed the letter, she felt a shift within, a subtle, tender hope that healing might be possible, that the river's light might reveal not only sorrow, but also the wish her mother had left behind. The next dawn found Princess Lian alone at the river's edge, shrouded in mist and uncertainty. The Starry River surged and churned, its surface fractured by the wind, echoing the turbulence inside her. She stared into the water, hoping for a sign, but the reflection staring back was warped, her own face blurred by ripples and doubt. "I don't recognize myself," Princess Lian murmured, the ache in her voice nearly swallowed by the rush of water. The memory of her mother's guidance warred with the voices of the court, demanding strength and poise. The more she tried to still her heart, the more the longing roared within. She grasped the marble railing, knuckles white. Deep below, something shimmered, just out of reach, hinting at hidden truth. Fear and hope battled as the morning sun pierced the haze, lighting the way ahead, but only if she dared to look beyond her own reflection. Later that morning, Princess Lian wandered through the palace's oldest wing, its corridors heavy with dust and the scent of sandalwood. There, she came upon the Hall of Ancestors, a sacred gallery of painted scrolls and stone tablets bearing the names of those who came before her. Silence filled the vast chamber. Lian moved from one portrait to another, searching the faces of ancient kings and queens for some fragment of herself. "Were you ever lost as I am now?" she whispered to the rows of silent witnesses. The weight of legacy pressed on her, her wish feeling smaller with every step. Yet, as her gaze met her mother's portrait, the queen's painted eyes seemed to urge her onward. Doubt gave way to a stubborn ember of courage. She would face the truth, no matter how painful, and prove worthy of her lineage. Noon brought restless energy and a clamor of festival preparations outside the palace walls. Princess Lian watched from a shaded balcony as villagers gathered by the river, their faces alight with excitement, voices rising in song and laughter. Colorful banners fluttered, drums pounded, and the world seemed briefly free of sorrow. Yet Lian's heart twisted with envy at their ease. "Why do they smile while I ache?" she wondered. The sight of a family lighting a small lantern together, mother, father, and child, sent a sharp pang through her. Princess Lian said, "Perhaps their happiness is not the absence of grief, but the courage to love despite it." The realization stung, but beneath the pain, she felt the first true yearning, not just for answers but for connection, to the world, to others, and to herself. That afternoon, unable to bear her isolation, Princess Lian found herself in the palace armory, an echoing chamber of polished wood and steel. Warriors trained beyond the windows, their voices and movements sharp with purpose. She picked up a wooden practice sword, testing its weight in her hand, seeking grounding. "Strength is not in the blade but in the heart," her mother once said. Lian swung the sword in clumsy arcs, frustration burning away her composure. Sweat beaded on her brow, the motion loosening knots of grief and fear. When an old swordmaster entered and bowed, Lian hesitated, but then accepted his silent invitation to train. Blow by blow, the dance of practice forced her into the present, pain and confusion replaced, for a time, by discipline and focus. A small, hard ember of confidence was kindled. As twilight approached, Princess Lian sat alone by the Starry River, her sword resting beside her. The world was hushed, the festival's distant songs giving way to the gentle hush of water and wind. Lian gazed into the river's shifting surface, her reflection steadier now, though sorrow still lingered in her eyes. "Every trial has shaped me," she whispered. "Every loss is a lesson." For the first time she felt gratitude, however faint, for the pain that had carved new strength into her heart. Lanterns drifted by, carrying the wishes of strangers, and Lian pressed her palms together in silent prayer, her wish for truth blending with theirs, her spirit less alone in its longing. The river's current caught the first stars, and she let herself believe that, in surrendering to the flow, she might find her own way forward. Night descended quickly, blanketing the palace in deep shadow and the river in silver mist. Princess Lian wandered the empty halls, the echo of her footsteps matching the restlessness inside her. Drawn by an unfamiliar pull, she slipped into her mother's old study, a place she had long avoided. The scent of old sandalwood and dried lotus petals lingered. On the desk, beneath layers of dust, she found a hidden box marked with the royal seal. Her fingers trembled as she opened it to reveal a letter, her mother's true last words, never spoken aloud. Princess Lian read, "The truth you seek is not beneath the river's light, but within your own heart. Tears spilled freely as the weight of her longing shifted. The answer had always been closer than she dared to look. For the first time, the silence felt like comfort, not emptiness. Stunned by the letter's truth, Lian wandered out into the night garden, heart pounding with new understanding. The moon hung full and cold above, casting sharp shadows on the winding paths. Lian's thoughts churned. Her quest was never for the river's secret, but for the courage to trust herself. She remembered her mother's gentle voice, urging her to listen within, not chase what lay beyond reach. Beneath a moonlit magnolia, Lian pressed the letter to her chest. "I have searched everywhere but here," she whispered, feeling both shame and relief. As petals rained down around her, a strange peace crept in, the burden of her wish growing lighter as the truth settled into her bones. With trembling steps, Princess Lian returned to the riverbank where so many wishes had been sent downstream. The water was calm, its surface smooth and black as glass, mirroring the sky's stars. She remembered every hope, every prayer she had cast upon these waters, believing answers would rise from their depths. Tonight she finally understood. The river's light could only show what was already inside her. "Mother, you wanted me to find myself," Princess Lian said, her voice steady despite the quiver in her chest. She knelt by the water, seeing her reflection not as a girl lost in sorrow, but as someone ready to accept the truth of her own heart. In that mirrored gaze, forgiveness for all her longing began to bloom. A sudden wind rose, rattling the trees and sending ripples across the water's mirror. Princess Lian felt fear surge again. What if her new understanding wasn't enough? What if she was not strong enough to live the truth she'd found? In that moment, a soft, warm voice echoed in her memory. "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to walk forward despite it." Lian closed her eyes, holding on to that wisdom, letting herself feel her vulnerability without shame. When she opened her eyes, the river sparkled with a new kind of light, one born not from the heavens above, but from the hope she kindled within. With slow, trembling breath, Lian stood and took her first step along the river's path, heart pounding with both terror and anticipation. Dawn broke slowly, turning the world to gold. Princess Lian walked back through the palace gates, the night's revelations etched deep in her gaze. For the first time, she did not hide from the servants or the council waiting inside. She carried her mother's letter openly, her step steady, posture unyielding. As she passed through the grand halls, advisors fell silent, sensing a change. "Today, I carry both sorrow and hope," Princess Lian said quietly, voice calm, yet unbreakable. The morning sun flooded through the palace windows, painting her in light. In her chest, the ache of longing had become a quiet strength. The path ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time, Princess Lian welcomed it with open eyes and an open heart. The palace courtyard was silent, except for the distant rush of the river. Princess Lian stood in ceremonial robes of deep blue, the letter clutched in her hand. Before her the court assembled, ministers, servants, elders, all waiting for the princess to speak, uncertainty and hope flickering in their eyes. Lian's heart thundered, fear and resolve battling within. She raised her voice, clear and unwavering. "My mother's wish was not a secret kept in the river, but the courage to live in truth," Princess Lian declared, her words carrying through the marble columns. As her confession rang out, she saw both relief and apprehension ripple through the crowd. For the first time, she shed her fear of their judgment, letting her vulnerability shine. The air trembled, charged with the promise of change. Later, alone in the queen's former chamber, Lian struggled with the depth of her choice. She set the letter on a lacquered table and stared at her own reflection in a gilded mirror. Doubt surged. Was she ready to let go of her grief? A sudden gust rattled the windows. Princess Lian pressed her hand to the glass, whispering, "Am I betraying you by moving on?" The words stung, but in their echo she felt a shift. A memory of her mother's laughter, a sense of permission to be free. She wiped a tear from her cheek, squared her shoulders, and returned to the window, facing the rising sun. "I carry you with me always," she said. The pain did not vanish, but her fear of healing grew smaller, and her will to choose her own future grew bright. The day grew stormy, thunder rolling over the city. Princess Lian sought solitude by the Starry River, the wind whipping her robe and hair as the first drops of rain fell. She stood at the water's edge, her wish trembling on her lips. "If I let go of sorrow, what remains?" she called to the churning sky. Lightning flashed, illuminating her determined face. For a moment, she closed her eyes and let herself feel every ache, loss, longing, love. Without running, the storm broke over her, but she stood firm, surrendering old pain to the river's current. The water rose and rushed past, fierce and cleansing. As the storm faded, Lian opened her eyes, the weight in her chest eased by the power of her own choice to accept, release, and begin anew. After the storm, the world was washed clean. Princess Lian wandered among the villagers on the riverbank, her robe damp, but her spirit light. She saw old women lighting incense, young men repairing fishing nets, children skipping stones and laughing together. They looked at her not as a distant ruler, but as one of their own, returned from the edge. Lian knelt with an elderly woman, helping her tie a prayer to a lantern. "Grief binds us all, but so does hope," she said softly. As the lantern drifted onto the river, the woman squeezed her hand in thanks. In that small gesture, Lian felt her burdens shared and lightened. A new connection with her people born not of duty, but of shared humanity. That night, under a sky swept clear of clouds, Princess Lian returned to the balcony overlooking the Starry River. Alone, she released her own lantern, its flame trembling but steady. She bowed her head, not in grief, but in gratitude, for the pain that shaped her, for the love that still lingered, for the truth she now carried within. The river sparkled, carrying her wish downstream with all the others, a bright thread woven into the current. Princess Lian said, "I am not alone. My wish is not an end, but a beginning." As the lantern floated away, her heart finally found a quiet, joyful peace. The sky blazed with stars, the world was vast, uncertain, and full of possibility. Dawn returned with gentle warmth, painting the palace and riverbank in golden light. Princess Lian awoke, rested for the first time in many moons, her heart no longer haunted by sharp regret. She walked barefoot through dew-damp gardens, letting the earth ground her spirit. The scent of fresh blossoms and the melody of birdsong eased the last traces of sorrow. At the edge of the reflecting pool, she paused, watching the sky and river merge in soft hues. Princess Lian said, "Forgiveness is the gift I give myself." She breathed deeply, letting the cool air fill her with peace. For the first time she felt gratitude not only for the joy, but for the sorrow that had shaped her path. Her mother's memory remained, a quiet presence, no longer a wound, but a guiding light within. Later, Princess Lian gathered the royal council in the great hall, sunlight pouring through stained glass windows. She spoke with gentle authority, sharing not only her plans for the realm, but also the lessons of her journey, how sorrow could transform, how love endures even as people part, how the greatest strength is found in understanding and compassion. Her voice was steady, her gaze bright with wisdom. Ministers listened, some with tears in their eyes. "We honor those we've lost by living with open hearts," Princess Lian declared. Her presence brought a hush, a collective release of tension. For the first time the court saw her not only as the daughter of a queen, but as a leader in her own right, one who had learned to let go, and in letting go, had found her true self. In the quiet of the afternoon, Princess Lian visited her mother's memorial, a garden shrine veiled with incense and soft petals. She knelt in gratitude, offering silent thanks for every lesson, joy and hardship alike. Princess Lian said, "You remain my guide, not as sorrow, but as wisdom and love." The wind carried her words through the garden, rustling bamboo and lilies, merging her voice with the river's distant song. A gentle peace filled her, the pain of loss now transformed into gentle remembrance. Lian lingered, watching butterflies land on her open hand, a sign that life, fragile and fleeting, was also beautiful. She left a white blossom at the shrine, then rose with her head high, ready for the world that awaited her beyond memory and regret. As twilight approached, Princess Lian joined the villagers along the riverbank. Gone was the barrier between ruler and people. She laughed, listened, and shared stories with them as equal. Children gathered around, eager for tales of the river's magic and the princess's adventures. Lian's laughter rang bright, her spirit lighter than it had ever been. She listened as villagers spoke of their own wishes and losses, offering comfort and hope in return. "We are all travelers, each with our own river to cross," she said, her words weaving new threads of unity. Lanterns glowed along the water, and Lian felt at home. Not just in the palace or in memory, but in the embrace of her people and the ever-changing present. As the stars bloomed overhead, Princess Lian returned one last time to the palace balcony, the Starry River whispering below. She breathed in the night's fragrance, felt the gentle pulse of peace within her chest, and let her gaze drift over the lantern-lit waters. The pain of the past, once so fierce, had softened into wisdom and compassion. "This is my mother's wish made real," Princess Lian said softly. A heart awakened, a life embraced. The sky and river sparkled together, and she realized that the journey had never been about finding a single answer, but about opening herself to all the beauty and sorrow the world held. With a grateful smile, she let the quiet surround her, knowing that her story, like the river, would flow ever onward, shaped by every joy, every sorrow, every wish. Morning rose quiet and clear, casting the world in the soft gold of promise. Princess Lian moved gently through the palace, her presence calm and luminous. She paused by the river's edge as a new day began, feeling the world both vast and intimate. The Starry River ran smooth and silent, lanterns drifting far downstream, memories shimmering in their wake. Lian cupped her hands and let the cool water pass through, watching sunlight catch the ripples. "Life flows on, always changing, always beautiful," Princess Lian said, her voice steady. In this moment of stillness, she sensed the interconnectedness of every sorrow and every joy, her wish no longer a plea, but a quiet blessing she carried within. The world was bright with possibility, her heart open and light. Later that day, Princess Lian gathered the children in the palace gardens, sharing stories beneath blooming magnolias. Her laughter mingled with theirs, her grief now woven into the gentle wisdom in her eyes. She showed them how to fold paper boats, guiding small hands, encouraging each wish whispered into every crease. "The river carries all our dreams," Princess Lian told them, her words a balm to those listening. Children's voices rose in delighted chorus, and the air shimmered with the wonder of new beginnings. In their smiles, Lian saw reflections of her younger self, lost, yearning, yet resilient. Her compassion, once born of pain, now blossomed into guidance for others, a living gift to those who would someday carry their own wishes to the river. As afternoon waned, Princess Lian found herself beside an elderly villager resting under a willow tree, the two of them sharing quiet conversation. The old woman spoke of loss and hope, her voice gentle and wise. Lian listened with full attention, her heart open and understanding. "Sorrow is the river we all must cross," the woman said, squeezing Lian's hand. Lian replied softly, "And compassion is the bridge." In that peaceful exchange, generations met and understood one another. Lian saw her own journey reflected in the elder's eyes, pain transformed into patience, longing into peace. As they watched the shadows lengthen and lanterns appear on the water, Lian felt her mother's presence near, not as absence but as love woven through every bond and every act of kindness. Twilight gathered over the palace as Princess Lian returned once more to the highest balcony, the world hushed in anticipation. The Starry River shimmered below, lanterns gliding on its surface, each a symbol of hope, remembrance, and forgiveness. Lian breathed deeply, feeling her mother's spirit and her own strength woven together. She understood now. Enlightenment was not an end, but the gentle acceptance of life's impermanence, and the choice to meet each moment with a generous heart. "To wish is to live," Princess Lian said softly, gazing at the endless sky. As stars began to prick the velvet dusk, she felt a profound peace, her wish fulfilled, her spirit quiet and luminous as the lanterns below. Night deepened, settling the world into velvet silence. Alone at last, Princess Lian stood at the river's edge, stars mirrored in the current. She cupped her hands, whispering a blessing for all hearts who wander, all souls who search. Every wish is a step toward awakening, Princess Lian said, her words dissolving into the night. The river carried her blessing downstream, joining countless others. For a long moment, Lian simply breathed, her spirit vast, her gaze gentle. In the river's song, she heard her own heart, and in the boundless sky, she found the answer she had long sought. Peace was not something to find, but something to become. The journey's end was in truth a beginning. The eternal return of hope, love, and compassion with every flowing tide.